Welcome everyone, you're watching Diplomatic Channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. This weekend is a very special one here in Nigeria. We're marking another Democracy Day. Not just marking it, we're reviewing the present government, how it has fared in 1 year since clinching power from the ruling party, which had held onto it for 16 years. This week's program kickstarts with the Minister of Foreign Affairs explaining what direction our foreign policy is headed and what the president's trips abroad have achieved or hope to achieve. Plus, it's been a while we checked in on the situation in Iraq as IS militants have been working underground to enter the city of Fallujah. But stay with us as we let you in on other discussions in diplomatic circles. Let's begin in South Sudan, where the United Nations Humanitarian Coordinator for South Sudan, Eugene Owusu, has called for renewed efforts to disperse humanitarian aid money to the country, saying the UN has only received 29% of the cash needed. In January this year, the United Nations called for $1.3 billion in humanitarian aid for South Sudan, where 2 in 10 of the population have been driven from their homes during the 2 years of conflict. During a press briefing, Mr. Owusu said more needs to be done to prioritize South Sudan in humanitarian interventions.
We must capitalize on the momentum generated by the summit to ensure that the global community does not allow South Sudan to become a forgotten crisis. The humanitarian appeal that we launched late last year is today funded at only 29%. We need more contributions urgently in order to reach people in dire need across the country as they seek to regain their lives and indeed their livelihoods.
Meanwhile, the UN Refugee Agency as well as aid agency Médecins Sans Frontières say between 700 to 900 migrants may have died at sea this week. The numbers are based on testimony from survivors, such as the 14,000 people rescued in just 1 week while making the journey from Libya towards Italy, the single most dangerous border passage for migrants in the world. Many of them are fleeing war and poverty, and some report a single ship capsizing this week where more than 550 people may have perished, many of them women and children. We're looking at amateur video posted to a social media website purporting to show fighting between Islamic State and Syrian rebels near the Turkish border. The fighting has killed dozens of people in the last 2 days as IS militants keep up an offensive that has led to rapid territorial gains. Fighters from the militants group entered the rebel-held town of Maria on Saturday, using at least 2 car bombs in the assault, and clashes continued late in the day, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. The Islamic State has been battling rebel factions fighting under the banner of the Free Syrian Army since late last year, but clashes have intensified in recent weeks. Finally, US-led coalition forces are assisting operations in villages like Hassan Shami, located to the east of Islamic State's Mosul stronghold. The service members were heard speaking English, but US military officials would not confirm if they were Americans or Canadians. Some were seen wearing maple leaf patches, the emblem of Canada. The presence of US coalition forces highlights an enhanced US involvement in the fight against Islamic State on the ground. More than 5,000 Iraqi Kurdish Peshmerga took part in Sunday's attack to dislodge Islamic State fighters from the east of Mosul, the largest city under the militants' control. Welcome back. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Jeffrey Onyema, has been in Oslo, Norway, attending the Africa-Nordic meeting of foreign ministers. That meeting holds once a year and is hosted either by an African or a Nordic country. It provides a framework for an informal, open dialogue on international topics that are relevant to both the Nordic region and to Africa. In case you're wondering, in the Nordic region are Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway and Sweden, including their associated territories, Greenland, the Faroe Islands and the Åland Islands. The population are mainly Scandinavian or Finnish. Back to the meeting, which held over the weekend. Issues on the agenda this year were economic development, job creation, migration and terrorism. Foreign ministers from Algeria, Angola, Benin, Botswana, Ghana, Mali, Mozambique, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Somalia, South Africa, Sweden and Finland were in attendance. Now you're wondering why this is important, right? Well, the minister has been on a number of trips already in his few months in office, attending several meetings alongside his colleagues from other countries. But he's doing this with one thing in mind, and that is Nigeria's foreign policy. A couple of weeks back, he was at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, where he explained it all out.
It's the minister's first visit to the Nigerian Institute of Foreign Affairs. Established since 1961, the institute aims to provide a nursery of ideas on what direction Nigeria should take on international affairs. It seemed necessary that the minister visit the specialized instrument of foreign policy formulation in Nigeria. The soft-spoken minister, Jeffrey Onyema, begins his address with his expectations for the institute.
First of all, as a think tank, for the ministry, and obviously a reservoir for research, which is absolutely crucial. Since I came on board, I've been seeing what has been written and what has been said about Nigeria's foreign policy.
Later, he speaks about Nigeria using all the goodwill it has acquired over the last 1 year to our advantage. It begins by providing a database with the right information for interested investors thinking of coming to Nigeria, and the importance of improving intra-Africa trade through the African Union and the Southern African Development Community, as Africa remains the centerpiece of Nigeria's foreign policy.
Free movement of people in Africa. And, the tragedy, first of all, as you all know, is that the level of intra-African trade is unbelievably low. Maybe about 12% of Africa's trade is done within Africa. Most of it is outside Africa. So there's really large margin for trade there, especially in the context of our diversification from a mono economy, and we're looking to also free up a market space for our entrepreneurs and encourage our entrepreneurs. And I felt also that this is an area that, again, the ministry can be trying to make a contribution in.
While the database has been prepared, Mr. Onyema wants to see more revenue generated by foreign missions around the world and the NIA engaging with the ministry real time and articulating the foreign policy direction of Nigeria.
This institute should really be equipped to play the role for which it was created, really as a think tank for government, and really engaging government, providing relevant resources for government, and being extremely proactive, helping even in policy formulation. And in speaking to the Director General, I realized that to be able to do that, you also need to have all the requisite resources available to you.
When he receives his plaque from the Institute and signs the visitors' register, the minister has not announced a change in policy. He has only developed a new strategy for making it work, helping Nigeria regain her place in the international community.
When we come back after the break, we speak to one man who used to be in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on his thoughts on where we're headed. Please stay with us.